south, 8th and 10th Armies attacked from Silesia and 14th Army from Slovakia. By the 5th of September, 4th Army had secured the Danzig corridor and was moving southeast alongside 3rd Army. By the 7th of September, 10th Army had advanced northeast to within 30 miles of Warsaw, cutting off Polish forces before they could reach them from Vistula. The main basis of German success in Poland was an entirely new tactic, which came to be called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war.
Or the proper name, War of Rapid Maneuver.
Blitzkrieg relied on deployment of armored forces in entire divisions. These Panzer divisions consisted of both light and heavy tanks, motorized infantry, artillery, and reconnaissance units. Once the massed heavy tanks had punched their way through enemy defenses, the breach would be consolidated and widened by the following wave of light tanks and infantry.
Although German heavy tanks didn't exist yet at this point, they had mediums.
Forward units continued their advance, carrying the battle into enemy rear areas.
By the way, heavy, light, and medium is a reference to how much armor does the vehicle have.
Was the close ground support provided by the Luftwaffe, whose airstrikes helped isolate frontline forces and cut them off from any logistic support. In the skies over Poland, the Luftwaffe rapidly achieved total aerial supremacy. Attacks against Polish airfields wiped out a large portion of the Polish Air Force on the first day of the war. The Luftwaffe struck hard at key military installations, supply lines, and rail networks. Indeed, the Germans were all too familiar with the layout of the Polish railway system, having built it themselves.
Because they owned it 20 years earlier. Before that land was snatched away from Germany by the British and the French.
On the 10th of September, the Poles began a general retreat toward the southeast of their country. On the 15th of September, the German Third Army completed its northern pincer movement. 4th and 14th Armies completed the encirclement from the east by September the 17th. Poland's fate was sealed when, on that same day, some 41 Russian divisions crossed her near-defenseless eastern frontiers. By September the 23rd, they had effortlessly occupied the zone allotted to them under the Nazi-Soviet pact.
Soviets, you say? Russians, communists.
Germans mopped up
Imagining
resistance
Chamberlain in his Peace in Europe piece of paper. And then the commies come in.
Overwhelmed by ferocious Luftwaffe bombing raids, Warsaw finally surrendered at 2 p.m. on September the 27th. The German victory had been achieved with a loss of only 44,000 casualties, compared to total Polish losses of nearly 1 million in killed, wounded, and captured. 2 days after the launch of the Polish invasion, France and Britain, in line with their earlier guarantees, declared war on Germany. However, Poland's geographical location and the swiftness of the German victory prevented them from intervening directly.
Except France tried, they did a 3-day invasion into Germany from the heading east.
Upon hearing of Poland's defeat, they withdrew. In September, the first detachments of the British Expeditionary Force, or BEF, began taking up positions along the Franco-Belgian border. By the end of the month, 13 British divisions were in place, numbering over 150,000 men. 21,000 vehicles accompanied the BEF to France, along with almost all of Britain's heavy military equipment. The French and British troops dug in and waited for the expected German attack in the west. No attack came, and for the next 8 months, Hostilities would be limited to sporadic artillery duels and bombing raids. The next major German offensive was directed not at France, but Scandinavia. In April 1940, German troops moved to occupy Denmark and Norway.
Although the French and British were already invading Norway in February of the same year.
Which was shipped out from Sweden.
It's called Plan R4.
By occupying Norway, Germany would also secure bases for air attacks against Allied shipping in the North Sea and keep the Royal Navy from the Baltic. The Allies had already realized that severing Germany's iron ore supply would cripple the Nazi war machine, and they were simultaneously planning their own operation in Norway.
Not planning, we're already engaged in.
Germany won the ensuing race. On April the 9th, German troops landed at Kristiansund, Bergen, Trondheim, and Narvik. Supporting airborne assaults were made against Oslo and Stavanger. This was the first major air-land-sea operation in history. On the same day, and in a space of 4 hours, the Germans occupied Denmark. By April the 16th, Germany controlled most of southern Norway. Despite heroic resistance, Norway's largely militia army had been unable to prevent the German capture of their coastal cities. Over the next 3 days, British and French troops landed at Namsos, Narvik, and Andelsnes. In the south, they advanced as far as Lillehammer, but were then repulsed and had to be withdrawn by early May. In the north, they pushed the Germans out of Narvik. However, the Allied campaign was doomed by poor coordination, especially between the Navy and infantry, while the total air supremacy achieved by the Luftwaffe proved decisive. The outcome of the Norwegian campaign was a foregone conclusion. Even before the fighting had finished there, the Germans were preparing to launch their greatest gamble of all, the invasion and conquest of the West. After his lightning conquest of Poland, Hitler had hoped the Allies would accept the German victory, just as they had earlier accepted the occupation of Austria and Czechoslovakia. Once he saw they were determined to fight, he had resolved to launch a western offensive as soon as possible. He knew the Allies would need time to mobilize fully and to draw on the resources of their overseas colonies. If given this time, they would be too strong for Germany to defeat. It was essential, then, that the German army should attack while it still had the initiative. His first strategic priority was to defeat the French army in the field. Once this was achieved, he felt confident that Britain would sue for peace. Much of Hitler's military outlook had been shaped by his time as a frontline soldier on the Western Front during the Great War. Many of his generals had been staff or artillery officers during World War I, and as such, would not have fought in the trenches. On this basis, Hitler distrusted their opinions and frequently overruled them. Indeed, all his military initiatives to date had been taken against the express advice of the High Command. Each one of these had succeeded, and for Hitler, these successes amounted to victories over his own generals as well as the enemy. Hitler's decision to go to war with Britain and France deeply dismayed his commanders. They neither shared his grand ambitions of conquest, nor believed the army was strong enough to realize them. Their opposition to Hitler was weakened after his run of successes. The High Command was also indebted to him for restoring the army's power and prestige. Hitler could also count on the support of the rank and file, who hero worshipped him. By the spring of 1940, Hitler's leadership was secure, and the army's loyalty was guaranteed. On the 21st of March 1940, Paul Reynaud became France's Prime Minister.
After a series of 42 previous prime ministers in the last
Finance
20 years.
effected major improvements in the French economy. Aged 62, he now found himself at the head of a government and a country that had long been torn by bitter political divisions.
Again, 42 prime ministers in 20 years before him.
Against Germany,
Oh.
and wanted France to adopt a more aggressive attitude. Upon taking office, he immediately cooperated with Britain in planning and executing the Allied intervention in Norway. Time and again, Renault's initiatives were blocked